Hey, South Korea, Hyundai, LG, Nanun Sagwanda. I apologize. We in the United States are having some technical difficulties with our democracy, and it appears to be also impacting our hospitality. I promise you we're not always this inhospitable, and certainly not to our friends. But due to an illness, an ailment that has affected our nation since its very beginning, a small minority of people have taken over our nation and decided that scarcity is the way to go, and that inhospitability to our friends and neighbors is who we are. You make fantastic vehicles and all sorts of other products that we need. You willingly gave us factories to make products here and create jobs for our people, and we are grateful for that. We are going to do our best to take these people out of power, but it will take some time and some effort on our part, and we will be responsible for making amends at that point. But until then, Nanun Sagwanda. And I don't know the plural of I apologize, but please accept it on our behalf.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Global Views with Josh, your spot for breaking down the madness of global politics with a touch of reason and a little bit of sarcasm to survive it all. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell so you don't miss the next global disaster wrapped in a press release. Now, let's talk about how Trump just managed to make South Korea say, yeah, we're good. Imagine investing billions to build jobs in America, only for ICE to raid your factory like it's a scene from a 90s action movie. Yep, that's the new reality of Hyundai.
South Korea just put a $350 billion investment package into the United States on hold because of the ICE raid on a Hyundai plant in Georgia, where ICE agents arrested 470 South Koreans and deported them back to South Korea. Many were here on legal visas, just not the right visas. Others were undocumented and working illegally. The package of $350 billion was supposed to support energy and semiconductor industries in the United States. Investments needed because of the severe tariffs that put a dent in these industries. Now the South Korean president is saying they're not giving up the money until they get assurances that this will never happen again as far as immigration raiding businesses and deporting employees back to South Korea or perhaps any country. Why this matters is because immigration is now colliding with global investment and trade policy. And now many foreigners and countries may not want to invest in the United States. Certainly South Korea doesn't. The policy question is this: should the U.S. government encourage investments in key industries, like this $350 billion from South Korea? Or is it most important to have strict immigration policy, no matter the consequences? Let me know what you think in the comments.
In the event that you're not keeping up with what's going on here in America, let me be the person to inform you, okay? Starting off strong, allegedly, right? Allegedly, South Korea is going to be pulling billions of investments following the ICE raid at their Georgia Hyundai plant. South Korean president literally stated that this is a warning and that the country's company, South Korea speaking, will be very hesitant in investing in the United States in the wake of the immigration raid at Georgia Hyundai LG energy plant, where 300 South Koreans were arrested. Now, you already know that Disney's Marvel is already leaving Georgia and is going to be relocating to the UK. So that's already a big economy shock to Georgia and overall America. Oh, also Georgia went through a job layoff, situation. They just laid off a whole bunch of people. So yeah. All right, moving along, and this information is actually confirmed. So Qatar is pulling $1.5 trillion worth of investments from the United States after Trump collaborated with Israel to bomb Palestine negotiators in Qatar. 1.5 trillion. Now, this following information that I'm about to give to you is also confirmed. So Russia leaked America's plan to cut 35 trillion in debt by converting US dollar to crypto, then forcing everybody on a new digital dollar at a discount. Now, the next part that I'm about to share with you, it sounds like tea, but they're starting to be able to confirm it. Apparently, Israel bought 98% of our United States Congress. Yeah, they're all bought politicians. Now, this is nothing new. We know that all of them are bought. But apparently, they're blackmailing Trump through the Epstein files. They're blackmailing him and all the rest of them that are in the files. And that's why America is still continuing to stand with them despite the rest of the world all making it very clear that they want nothing to do with Israel at all. And fun fact, before I end this video, did you know that Jews are the only group of people that have been kicked out of 110 countries? Every country that they tried to inhabit or they tried to occupy, they got kicked out of. They got kicked out of every one. 110 countries and counting.
According to BBC, South Korea is now opening an investigation into the United States and possible human rights violations after more than 300 workers detained at the Hyundai LG battery factory raid last week were held in squalid conditions, shackled for hours, denied representation, and had their due process infringed upon. This comes on the back of Hyundai now saying that that factory is delayed at least 2 months, if not indefinitely, while they work to try to find new workers that are willing to come to the United States and have the required skills to train the workforce here. An additional 22 proposed work sites by South Korean companies across the United States have been postponed. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump is on Truth Social yesterday, Sunday, begging additional companies and countries to come to the United States and teach U.S. workers skills such as shipbuilding, chip manufacturing, and a variety of other highly technical jobs. Why? So that the U.S. can beat them at their own game, according to him.
South Korea says it is unable to pay $350 billion up front to the U.S. under a tariff deal proposed by Donald Trump. The country is now looking for an alternative.
Now, trade deal between the United States and South Korea is in a flux following Donald Trump's demand for a $350 billion upfront investment.
South Korea's president warning of potentially devastating effects tied to the country's trade deal with the U.S. Speaking with Reuters, the Korean president saying his country's economy could fall into crisis like the one it faced in 1997.
Factories were supposed to roar back to life, cities were supposed to thrive again, and foreign money was expected to pour into the United States. That was the promise behind Trump's tariffs, a bold strategy to spark a new industrial revival. Yet the reality unfolding is far less triumphant. In July, Washington and Seoul announced a framework that could have sent $350 billion in South Korean investment into the US economy, tied to a rollback of certain tariffs. Months later, that pledge remains little more than words on paper. And South Korea isn't the only one holding back. Across Europe and Asia, grand investment announcements are stalled, with little sign of becoming real factories, jobs, or paychecks. The hesitation grew even louder after a shocking raid in Georgia, where foreign workers were arrested in a move that left investors questioning whether America is still the dependable partner it once claimed to be. If confidence continues to slip, who will be willing to place their bets on America's future? And how much longer can Washington hold onto the illusion of a comeback? In South Korea, the fallout from what happened in Georgia has not faded. Earlier this September, hundreds of engineers and technicians from Hyundai and LG arrived in the United States to help bring one of the largest battery projects in the country to life. Instead of recognition for their role in building a state-of-the-art facility, they were suddenly rounded up in an immigration raid. More than 300 workers were forced onto a plane back to Seoul, escorted home with no charges, no clear explanation, and the bitter memory of being treated as criminals. Families watching their return described it as humiliating. Executives in both companies saw something else, a warning sign that their billions of dollars in investment might not be welcome. The timing could not have been worse. Only weeks earlier, Washington and Seoul had unveiled a plan that, if successful, would have reshaped economic ties for years to come. The arrangement was simple on the surface. The United States promised to cap tariffs on Korean goods at 15%. In exchange, South Korea would channel an extraordinary sum, $350 billion, into American industries. It was supposed to be a landmark moment, a deal that symbolized mutual trust and ambition. Yet by the time those engineers were deported, the entire framework had stalled. The South Korean president himself made it clear that such a massive outflow of capital could not be risked without a financial backstop. Without a currency swap to shield Seoul from sudden shocks, the transfer of funds could put the Korean economy on the edge of a meltdown like the crisis of 1997. Until those guarantees are in place, the money will stay where it is. The Georgia raid turned hesitation into alarm. What was supposed to be a story of opportunity had become a lesson in risk. South Korea is not alone in this. Europe, too, has been caught between the promises of Washington and the reality of delivering capital. In September, American and European leaders announced a sweeping agreement. Tariffs capped at 15%, accompanied by pledges of $600 billion in European investment by the end of the decade. On paper, it looked bold and historic. In practice, the details remain vague. Who will provide the money? Which governments or corporations will step forward? When will the first projects actually begin? None of those questions have been answered. Across Europe, the public mood is skeptical. With inflation still high and many countries facing their own budget strains, ordinary citizens are asking why their capital should be sent abroad, while their own economies struggle. Without clarity and political will, the so-called breakthrough looks more like a headline than a turning point. The hesitation in Seoul and Brussels makes Canada's path even more revealing. Unlike Europe and South Korea, Ottawa has not rushed into grand announcements with Washington. Instead, Canada has chosen to concentrate on itself, directing resources into critical mineral projects, new pipelines, port expansions, and housing. Each of these efforts signals stability and long-term planning.
The Republicans did the dumbest thing in the world. South Korea is our ally, and they went into a Hyundai plant and they arrested 475 South Koreans who were here without the proper paperwork. Are you kidding me? Do we want Hyundai to leave the United States and go to another country? This is automobile manufacturing, which Trump wants.
Breaking news. South Korean giants like Hyundai, Samsung, LG, and SK Hynix are preparing a massive pullout from the United States, a move that could cost America over $600 billion. It all started after a shocking immigration raid in Georgia, where more than 300 Korean workers were detained at a Hyundai plant. Images of deported workers landing back in Seoul went viral, and in South Korea, outrage exploded. For millions, this was the moment they realized even mega corporations are not safe from the unpredictable American system. Now, insiders confirm Hyundai may withdraw up to 40% of its U.S. operations within the next 3 years, shifting factories to China and Southeast Asia. Samsung executives are saying openly, the U.S. is no longer a predictable market. Every month brings new rules that put long-term projects at risk. And China? Beijing is seizing the moment, offering tax holidays, free land, subsidies, even research funding to lure Korean businesses. Provincial authorities are already in talks with Hyundai and LG, ready to build entire industrial hubs just for them. Economists warn this is not just about one raid. It's about Trump's new tariff policies, rising protectionism, and stricter immigration laws. For companies that rely on thousands of immigrant workers, the risk is simply too high. The Financial Times and Wall Street Journal both agree. This could be a turning point in the global economy. For decades, America was the safest home for foreign investors. But now, the tide is shifting. The Korea International Trade Association bluntly said, the U.S. is losing its status as a safe haven for production. The backlash in Seoul is fierce. Hyundai's labor union declared they will not send workers to the U.S. under the threat of raids and deportations. Demonstrations have already begun in the streets, demanding the government protect citizens and reconsider trade with Washington. Meanwhile, Washington is scrambling. Governors in Georgia, Alabama, and Texas are warning of catastrophic job losses. The White House rushed an emergency meeting, discussing tax cuts and easier visas to stop the exodus. But analysts say it's too little, too late. And this shockwave isn't just limited to Korea. Japanese corporations like Toyota and Sony are already asking, are we next? Even German giants like Volkswagen and Daimler are holding secret talks about moving expansion to Asia. China is taking full advantage, pushing for an Asian industrial alliance, one that excludes the United States completely. If this trend continues, the autumn of 2025 could be remembered as the moment America's economic dominance started to crack, not from China's aggression, but from Washington's own policies pushing allies away. Question to you. Do you think Korean companies will really abandon the U.S., or will Washington find a way to keep them? Drop your thoughts below.
Here in Seoul, the images of armored vehicles and South Korean workers in shackles have really struck a nerve for many. Officials say they're deeply unhappy with both the scale of the U.S. immigration arrests and the decision to release footage of the operation.
If they were staying illegally without the proper paperwork, then the normal procedure should have been to inform them first and help them return home in the right way. But this time, our citizens were detained in such a shocking and irregular way. I think it really needs to be resolved through diplomacy.
I can't help but feel there's a tendency to look down on our country. The media keeps saying relations are going well diplomatically, but if you just look at something like this, the reality feels quite different.
Detained workers prepared to board that government-chartered flight back home, but the images of shackled workers could linger, casting a shadow over South Korea's multi-billion-dollar investment push into the United States.
And some of the best news I've heard all year. South Korea is considering suing the United States government for human rights violations over the whole, ICE raided that battery plant in Georgia and essentially kidnapped like 300 legal South Korean workers and then detained them. And those people are all back in South Korea, and apparently the South Korean government is interviewing them and considering coming after the United States for human rights violations, which we both, you and I both know that this is not going to affect you and me. This is not going to stop the administration from continuing to do the fucking bullshit that it is. But damn. Counterpoint, though, this negatively impacts all of us, not just the administration. Because South Korea has already indicated that they are reconsidering that battery plant that they are building. They are reconsidering further investing in the United States for, producing Hyundais here in the country. And this is just the start. Like, Trump is on the internet begging companies, please send your workers, send your factories. We'll take care of them. We'll learn from them. We'll do it better than them. This country is so fucked.
South Korea is not fucking around, as they shouldn't be. But this entire situation just got a whole lot more serious. That raid is being characterized as an intentional humiliation of Asians, as if people didn't already look at America in a certain type of way. But see, this situation is so much worse than you would like to actually think. Imagine, okay, one of the last known allies to the United States choosing to, let's just say hypothetically, part ways. People fail to comprehend how much power, especially behind closed doors, that the BRICS nations actually have. That is, without their actions even being noticed. But see, look at Biden's top contributor during 2020, right? And then once again in 2024, right? And then go back to 2020 and look at Trump's, and then look at Trump's in 2024, okay? You tell me the differences that you notice when you actually follow the money. Have you seen the state of our economy? Your leaders have somehow convinced you that this is still somehow a superpower and can make decisions on behalf of the rest of the world. But see, that's the point that I want to make. That right there, right? Because these decisions aren't made for the people. They're made for one specific motherfucking group. But see, while we cater to what the American people somehow consider to be our biggest ally, strategic moves are being made. And come just a couple of days from now, everything is going to change. And unfortunately, Chicago is about to find out the hard way. How do you not see preparation taking place, people? See, they've formed this narrative like they always have. And once again, I'm not talking about whom our supposed leaders are, okay? But once again, there has been a narrative created. This one being detaining illegal immigrants, which is fucking crazy to begin with, because half of you motherfuckers wouldn't have said shit about this 5 years ago. But how else do you think that they could convince you that it's okay for these actions to take place? And why the fuck do you think it happened during one administration instead of the last? Or the one before that, or the one before that, or the one before that? Oh wait, actually, it did. But that's how it works, people. You've been fooled, literally. I don't know how many times I have to tell you, stop watching mainstream media, please. You've been fooled into thinking that you picking sides holds any significance. Oh, in actuality, we have willingly allowed ourselves to become pawns for the last century. I mean, shit, honestly, it's probably like fucking 40 centuries at this point. In a chess game of deception involving the root of all evil. Do you know what that is? Greed, especially materialistic greed. This hunger that has been placed inside of all of our souls things, a certain hunger that we are meant to defer away from, right? We aren't meant to give into that fucking temptation. And if those two motherfucking deities realistically just got along this entire fucking time, we wouldn't have this problem. We'll save that for another video. But honestly, at this point, the only chance that we as a species, okay, as a mortal species, the only one in this motherfucking galaxy, by the way, have of being able to move forward, have to eliminate this materialistic mindset, okay? But not just that, we have to eliminate any form of authority that we allow to once again make these decisions for us, that literally impact us every single time that they're fucking made. What even is patriotism at this point? Honestly, people, that's an honest question. What is patriotism anymore? Especially when it comes to decisions that are impacting an already suffering community. A community that impacts your motherfucking economy, people. Hold them accountable.
This message is for the Karen who thought reporting Hyundai subcontractors to ICE was helping. So let's unpack the damage you created. So ICE, if those don't know, raided Hyundai's $7.6 billion battery plant site in Georgia, detaining 475 subcontractors. So these were not Hyundai employees, but the very workers building and training for America's clean energy future. And so here's the fallout. South Korea issued a statement of concern and regret and announced they're sending their own planes to retrieve their citizens because they do not trust the U.S. government to do the right thing, fearing that their workers might just disappear. Another creator actually nailed it on the head. These subcontractors weren't just building, they were training Americans in specialized high-tech work. So now that pipeline of knowledge is gone, and with it, billions in potential. So let's be clear. Racism is costing the United States and especially the state of Georgia millions, if not billions. And the politicians cheering this raid on, some are even running for Senate in Georgia, including that Karen. So this isn't protecting anyone. It's self-sabotage. And while all this is happening, as a reminder, Marvel Studios is also pulling out of Atlanta. They're moving their productions to the UK with more than 20,000 jobs. Global industries are watching, and they do not want to invest in instability. Georgia is bleeding jobs, global trust, and economic stability, and so is the rest of the United States. Racism isn't just about hate, it's about the price tag that we all have to pay.
So if you took a look at South Korean media, folks, and their reaction to 300 of their nationals being detained, who were legal, seeing them shackled and chained, shackled at the ankles and chained at the arms, and the way they've been left, the public has reacted with utter disgust. So much so that the Korea Times has reported this morning that the South Korean government is currently putting 22 U.S. expansion projects on hold, and it doesn't explain the nature of those projects or what jobs might be created through them. But the foolishness of the Trump administration is having repercussions. Folks, the source for this is the Korea Times. My name is Nick. Let me know what you think about this in the comments.
22 additional South Korean sponsored or funded projects inside the United States are now at risk of being canceled, all thanks to the Republican congressional candidate Tori Bauman, who is running for the 13th or is it 12th district, I don't know, because she's not that important, representative seat in Georgia. She decided she wanted to be a racist white Karen, and now is going to cost tens of thousands of Americans their jobs, including the 8,000 positions that were slated to open in her hometown when this facility was fully built out. Additionally, they're saying that there will be positions at the Carrollton factory that Hyundai has operational that will be canceled, like I said. But all total, 22 additional South Korean companies or businesses that were in the process of being planned or built have now stopped all the production. Everything related to those facilities has been put on pause, and this was all part of the tariff deal between the White House and South Korea. This one racist woman in Georgia is going to cost tens of thousands of Americans potential jobs and has all by herself created an international incident.
Did you see these videos of an immigration raid at a Hyundai construction site in Georgia? Listen to this.
Warrant for this entire construction site, okay? We're Homeland Security. We have a search warrant for the whole site. We need construction to cease immediately. We need all work to end on the site right now.
This happened at the construction site for the Hyundai and LG Energy Solutions new battery plant in Georgia, where agents from FBI, DEA, ICE, HSI, Georgia State Patrol, and others detained 450 people, including more than 300 Korean nationals. According to reports, agents went into the facility and asked everyone if they were U.S. citizens. Then they put U.S. citizens on one side and everyone else put on the other side and harassed and forced to show their immigration paperwork. Because of the raid, the South Korean government is very concerned about its company's investments in the U.S. and the treatment of its people. The South Korean government is trying to figure out why the construction site was raided, saying that the detained South Koreans had entered the U.S. on a B-1 temporary visitor visa. However, it is unclear if those workers subsequently tried to get a work visa or if they even knew that they couldn't work with the visa they had. But like we have seen from this administration, they're going after migrants regardless of their status. Hyundai did say that they're working with the U.S. government in the investigation, but if this is how the U.S. is going to treat workers, maybe more companies and potential employees should reconsider coming to the U.S. Look, I'm not trying to defend corporations that are probably taking advantage of their workers and their status. I'm concerned about the people. A lot of people were detained, which means kids probably went home with either one or both of their parents missing. These are people who are working, most likely paying taxes, and their only infraction is probably not having the proper paperwork to work in the US. And out of desperation, they took a job. This could all be a lot easier if the US government actually let people adjust their status. If you think these people can migrate all the way to the US, get a job, pay taxes, but somehow they're not smart enough or law-abiding enough to adjust their status, then you have no idea how the immigration system actually works. This government makes it intentionally difficult for people to adjust their immigration status. Or in the case of the Trump administration, revoking people's status to make them undocumented. So undocumented people can be exploited, used as pawns in these political games, and at the end are the ones that are blamed for everything while the bosses and corporations get off free.
And the battery plant raided in Georgia, the South Korean battery plant that got raided, it's worse than we even thought. Look at this. Look at this. They were going to be producing 500,000 batteries for electric and hybrid vehicles. And now other companies are thinking about pulling out of investments in the United States of America. Yes, one person is the one who reported this, but it's the other clowns that rounded up these people. And by the way, South Korea, this is all over South Korea news, it's all over the world. This is an international crisis. And they are now saying that there was human rights violations and showing news of these people being in chains and all kinds of bad stuff. This could potentially lose more industries coming to the United States of America. I have reported that Subaru is leaving, that a $50 million plant in Detroit is scrapped after 3 years of planning. Marvel is pulling. This is going to be catastrophic. When you elect somebody who is hateful, sexist, a bigot, gone bankrupt 6 times, and then he brings in a circus, what do you think we're going to get? This is going to take years or decades, if ever, to recover from. Do you agree?
The arrest of 475 South Koreans at a Hyundai factory in Georgia is indicative of the failure of this administration to deliver on the promise. Here's what the thing is. When you set a quota like Stephen Miller, who is best known as a massive servile cuckold and a really, really unmasculine man, like the definition of not masculine at all. This is a guy who set a 3,000 arrest per day quota, right? So what happens when you set that kind of quota is you need vast numbers. So what do? You raid a electric vehicle plant where people are just training Americans to do the job that is going to bring thousands of American jobs, and they are all on valid visas, but you raid them, you take all of them into custody. That's a good portion of your quota for the day. And if you want to go arrest criminals and gang members, well, gosh, you got to devote man hours, you got to devote time, you got to devote energy, you got to put all this work into investigating and finding out where people are at. And why do that when you can just pull up to Home Depot with a Penske truck and get rid of the hardworking immigrants? Well, the effect is chilling. Tourism, international tourism, which a lot of places in America, including Las Vegas, deeply rely on. Tourism's down, the price of fruits and vegetables are up 38% year over year. A lot of that has to do with the lack of farm labor shortage. This is the effects of this horrible policy will be felt for years. They may not be recoverable. And it's evil.
So Hyundai opened a major factory in the US. A big win, right? Jobs, economic boost, headlines, reading, America is open for business. Trump took credit, of course, but fast forward a few months, and suddenly ICE agents stormed the facility, detained immigrant workers like it was some kind of anti-immigration PR stunt. Now, South Korea, a key US ally and investor, is not amused. In fact, after the raid and the pile-up of Trump's unpredictable trade policies, they are rethinking the whole investment game. And honestly, who could blame them? Because, let's be real. You can't invite someone to your house for dinner, then call the cops on their employees, mid-meal. That's basically what happened here. And somehow, the Trump administration thought that that would inspire foreign investment. That's genius, right? Hyundai executives reportedly felt blindsided and betrayed. South Korea's government officials quietly pulled the plug on future expansions, choosing to move projects elsewhere, likely to countries where business friendly doesn't mean get raided on Tuesday. And while the administration keeps shouting about bringing manufacturing jobs back to America, the companies that actually do it are being pushed for following the rules. It's like watching someone pour sugar in a gas tank and then complain that the car won't start. So here we are again. Another international embarrassment, another job creator gone, another headline that makes America look like a bad business partner. And somehow, Trump's team is still pointing fingers instead of looking in the mirror. But what do you think? Do you believe South Korea made the right call by pulling out? Should companies like Hyundai trust the government that raised their factories? And at this rate, who's going to invest in Trump's America next? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. I'm reading all of them. And as always, hit that like if you're tired of political chaos costing real people their livelihood. Subscribe for more honest takes from around the world. And until next time, this is Josh from Global Views, reminding you, when the business world loses confidence, the people lose jobs. Credit belongs to original creators.